Muchas gracias a los expositores y al moderador del segundo panel. Y ahora sí, sin solución de continuidad, pasamos a la disertación de Des Browne. Des Browne es miembro del Parlamento británico, vicepresidente del directorio del Nuclear Threat Initiative y organizador de la red de líderes de Europa. Fue secretario de Estado de Defensa, al mismo tiempo que secretario de Estado para Escocia, y fue nombrado enviado especial del primer ministro Gordon Browne a Sri Lanka. También formó parte de la primera reunión del Comité Conjunto sobre la Estrategia de Seguridad Nacional. Desde 2009 ha sido el coordinador del Top Level Group de parlamentarios británicos para el desarme nuclear multilateral y la no proliferación. Lord Browne, thank you for accepting our invitation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for those kind words of introduction, and Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, fellow conferee, and many friends in this room. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I want to start first of all by thanking you, Irma, and the Latin American and Caribbean Leadership Network for inviting me to not just to Buenos Aires, and this is the first time I've ever been here, but also to address this tremendous audience of policymakers, diplomats, students, members of the military, and others who have gathered to focus on the nuclear policy issues that are so important to global security. Let me say, Irma, it's clear from their presence in this room that you have done stellar work on these complex issues. The fact that you have gathered and put together today's seminar and are hosting tomorrow's meeting of global leaders is testament to your great energy and dedication, and I salute you for it. I know that we across the world appreciate the work that you have done to make the world safer today and for future generations. The topics that we are addressing over these days and in today's seminar, from the future of non-proliferation and disarmament to the role of global and regional tensions, clearly present significant challenges. And unfortunately, these challenges feel particularly acute today, and certainly from a European perspective, I can tell you they do. The truth is that we are at a very precarious moment on a host of nuclear security fronts. As we've heard already this morning, prospects for the P5 process and the upcoming Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference are not encouraging. The incremental approach to disarmament, to the bargain that the recognised nuclear weapon states, the United Kingdom, the United States, Russia, China and France, struck over 45 years ago now, is so painfully slow that it often feels as if we are moving backwards and not forwards. And it's difficult to see a path forward when the 5 nuclear weapon states can't agree among themselves on how to proceed. And the non-nuclear weapon states are, and I don't mince my words about this, angry about the pace of progress towards disarmament. Meanwhile, we have states expanding their nuclear arsenals, surreptitiously seeking nuclear weapons under the guise of a civil energy program, and detonating nuclear test devices in the face of international condemnation. Finding a productive course to take with respect to Iran and North Korea is a particularly difficult challenge. We did see the approval of the New START treaty between the United States and Russia in 2010. It was an important achievement for global security, but additional reductions are needed, and the prospects for talks on that front are dim at the very best. Indeed, an expectation that the United States and Russia will talk about anything, the prospects for that are dim at the moment. The chilling effects of recent events in Ukraine is that our agenda today is in danger of being put into deep freeze. And worse yet, the situation not only strains relations between Russia and the United States, it may serve, and is proving to do so for some, to boost the arguments of those who oppose reducing the role of nuclear weapons in NATO's security construct. Decades after more than 2,000 nuclear tests were conducted worldwide, leaving a ghastly humanitarian and environmental legacy amid growing concerns about the proliferation and security of nuclear weapons, efforts to ratify the ban on nuclear tests are stuck. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty was adopted and opened for signature in 1996 as a key piece of our global nuclear security architecture, and since then 183 countries have signed the treaty and 162 have ratified. But in the United States, the process has been blocked in the US Congress. And it's blocked elsewhere as well, as we've already heard, including in China, importantly, which won't ratify until and unless the US does. And at the risk of utterly depressing everyone here, I must add one more problem to the list, although I could add many more. And that's that all the nuclear weapon states today are now working to modernise their arsenals, sending a powerful and unfortunate message about their lack of enthusiasm for arms control. Over the next 3 decades, the United States alone is expected to spend a staggering $1 trillion on modernising and maintaining its nuclear arsenal. So yes, much of our agenda is stuck, but we mustn't allow this negative state of affairs to drain our resolve or to discourage those interested in working on these critical issues. It may seem hopeless today, but it's important to remember that we will not always be in this moment. As the situation in Ukraine has demonstrated so clearly, the global security landscape can change unexpectedly and almost overnight. And fortunately, history has shown us that it can change sometimes for the better. We can and we must work towards the day when it will change to favour our work and the work predicated by the NPT. So as we continue to press ahead, I think we can all take some solace in the axiom proffered by my good friend Lassina Serbo, the very able head of the CTBTO, who said, "It is a well-known fact that frustration often paves the way for innovation." So perhaps the best course of action is, in the words of my colleague Dr. Ian Cairns, the director of the European Leadership Network, to address the issues that are right in front of us. And here's what I believe we need to do. We must firstly avoid the unintended escalation of the situation in Ukraine. And we must manage the confrontation there effectively and responsibly. These destabilising events confirm the need for a new approach to Euro-Atlantic security, which was the subject of the 2013 report Building Mutual Security in the Euro-Atlantic Region, a process which I had the privilege of co-chairing with former Senator Sam Nunn, former Russian Foreign Minister Igor Ivanov, and the German former Deputy Foreign Minister Wolfgang Ischinger, who is the well-known leader of the Munich Security Conference. Though written before Ukraine erupted, the report contains medium and long-term solutions that we still believe can contribute to solutions for the region, solutions that will improve security globally, and we will be re-energising the presentation of that report and that thinking over the coming months. We must do everything we can to get a deal done with Iran, or at the very least an agreement to continue the dialogue, maintaining the status quo, and I mean the status quo now. In the event of a deal, we must ensure that the US Congress approves the necessary sanctions relief measures. We must turn the Humanitarian Impacts Initiative, a set of global conferences on the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons use, into a shared enterprise across nuclear haves and have-nots, rather than a new point of division. And we must do this by focusing on preventing the worst, not only through disarmament, but by de-alerting, by securing materials, by universalising the additional protocol, and by ramping up considerably effective preparations to handle an incident should one happen. And we must not forget about tactical nuclear weapons in Europe. We need a more open and honest discussion about how most effectively we ensure European security with capabilities that are actually usable. I am optimistic about the possibility for progress, and you should be too, because there are a number of innovative ideas out there about how to tackle many of these issues, and there's a great deal of innovative work going on. Let me begin with the P5 process. As the 2015 NPT Review Conference approaches, one question many of us have considered is how to revitalise the process itself. Well, transparency is the key. I believe we need to open it up and make it more accountable, and I was partly the architect of this process. One way to do that might be to hold a session at the review conference, for example, during which nuclear weapon states collectively are quizzed by non-nuclear weapon states on their progress in disarmament and the challenges that they face. There's broad agreement that all states need to reduce the salience attached to nuclear weapons, and it might be useful to have more discussions within formal NPT settings about what this actually means. These discussions could lead to proposals about what both nuclear and non-nuclear weapon states could do to facilitate it. A successful 2015 NPT review conference also would require countries to take a series of steps before the conference convenes, but they'll have to act fast. Among them, as proposed by the European Leadership Network in a recent statement, are Russia and the United States and the UK, the three NPT depository states, should issue a statement jointly with the UN Secretary-General, confirming that they will work towards setting up a conference on a WMD-free zone in the Middle East. Nuclear weapon states should agree to be more transparent and demonstrate greater commitment to the goal of disarmament. All nuclear weapon states should participate in and help shape the agenda for the third conference on the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons, which is now set to take place only next month in Austria. I would note that in a very positive development, the United States announced just last week or the week before that it will attend the conference this year for the first time. The other nuclear weapon states should follow suit. Finally, the United States and Russia should reiterate their willingness to maintain a nuclear arms control and disarmament dialogue despite current tensions in their relationship. Prompt launch posture of the US and Russian nuclear forces may be an area ripe for progress too. A quarter of a century after the end of the Cold War, each country still deploys hundreds of long-range ballistic missiles, land and sea-based, with roughly 2,000 nuclear warheads promptly set to destroy each other, capable of being fired within minutes. Each maintains large nuclear forces on day-to-day alert, ready for launch and capable of hitting their targets in less than 30 minutes. This launch on warning posture is set to ensure that there can be no advantage from a first strike, but it's also calculated to lead to an inevitable mistake. But inherent in this posture is the risk of accidental or unauthorized launch by either side, as well as the risk that a deliberate decision to use ballistic missiles will be made in haste on the basis of faulty or incomplete data. What's more, the risks posed by these forces are increasing as cyber threats and nuclear missile capabilities proliferate in other countries. So what can be done? Ultimately, the US and Russia could agree to reciprocal steps to reduce dangers by changing the nature of their force postures. These could be taken as part of a future process to repair the breach opened between the West and Russia over Ukraine. In the meantime, other governments and NGOs must work to increase awareness about this threat and keep the issue visible with governments and publics. We need to make it possible for Moscow and Washington to see the political and diplomatic benefits in addition to the security benefits of acting on this issue. And we need to underscore to countries that might be considering adopting such force postures in the future that they would decrease their security and have no support in the international community. As for the CTBT, we're a long way away from 1996 when its adoption represented a high water mark for multilateralism. There's no question that we've made progress since then, and the treaty has established a de facto global moratorium on testing. But we need to get the job done. And I'm confident we can do it with a concerted, coordinated effort by government, civil society, and the international scientific community, who are a significant component element to this. Today, the CTBTO's group of eminent persons, senior statesmen, politicians, and experts, is pressing the case with leaders in capitals of states that haven't ratified. All of us, though, can do more to answer the arguments against ratification, including that verification and monitoring won't work. We already have a state-of-the-art verification system in place, and important improvements are being made. So we have very solid answers to the CTBT critics, and we must dedicate ourselves to providing them and demanding action. And I look to the scientific and technical community for this leadership. These are just a few ideas of how to move forward. And at the Nuclear Threat Initiative, we have engaged governments and experts from around the world to work with us on an innovative project on issues from verification to nuclear material security, and on the issue of the 85%. We only yesterday launched a military materials study group to grapple with some of the challenges in relation to that, and I'm sure that my colleague and our President, Joan Rothling, will talk in more detail about that this afternoon. We believe that this kind of engagement is important because, although it may be a truism, it cannot be said enough when it comes to nuclear security. Global challenges require global solutions. So thank you for inviting me to be with you today. I look forward now to further engagement with many of you in this room and hearing ideas that you may have about how to make progress in these challenging issues. I do say this from the perspective of a European. The Latin American, the South American voice on these issues is extremely important. As has already been said, this is a whole continent for which there are no upsides to nuclear weapons. No strategic security, only risks. This voice needs to be heard much more strongly in the debates across the world. It is a unique voice. So thank you for the opportunity to engage with you. I have to say, looking around this room, I am optimistic. My own work in this field would not have been possible without a steady optimism about the possibility for progress. And the interest and dedication of those of you who are here today gives me yet more cause for that optimism. So thank you very much.
Bueno, agradecemos a Lord Browne por su diagnóstico y sus perspectivas a futuro. Tenemos previsto ahora entonces tiempo libre para el almuerzo y estaríamos retomando con el panel 3 y 4 a las 14 horas puntualmente. Muchas gracias.